Hi everybody, we're going to go through a quick overview of the statute of frauds. Okay, this is contracts, okay? We're going to go through some contract law. This is a defense for a breach of contract, okay? So let's say plaintiff and defendant get into an enforceable contract that has an offer, an acceptance, and consideration. Once they have a fully formed contract and either party breaches that contract, if the statute of frauds applies, this could be a great defense to use to say, hey, you can't back out of this contract, okay? So it can be very simple. The statute of frauds is not as tough as some people believe that it is, okay? So let's dive into the statute of frauds, okay? The statute of frauds, by definition, I wrote it down on the board. So I'm gonna move out of the way so you can see the definition word for word, is that a contract may not be enforced unless there is a writing which is signed by the party in which whom enforcement is sought. Okay? So the key thing here is that there's a contract, as I said, an enforceable contract with an offer, acceptance, and consideration, and there's a writing. Let's say plaintiff and defendant are suing each other, and the defendant has a writing in the contract. The defendant signs the contract. The defendant is the party in this definition. Okay, in this case, the party is defendant. And the plaintiff is trying to enforce the contract against the defendant. That's why there's enforcement going to be sought against the defendant, okay? So remember, I keep emphasizing this because this is really critical. Okay, I even have my classmates get this kind of confused, okay? There has to be a contract first. This is a defense for that contract. If either party breaches that contract and backs out, there must be a writing that is signed by the party against enforcement is sought against too, okay? So let me give you an example. Let's say that I have a contract with my friend Israel, and Israel says, Sam, sounds like a deal. I'll sell you my car for $5,000. We get a written contract down. He signs it, I sign it, and we date it, etc. But then next week, Israel says, oh, Sam, I can't do it. I found a better buyer who's going to buy my car for $10,000 rather than $5,000. Okay? So because we already had a fully formed contract and we signed it, I can sue Israel for that contract dispute because, hey, dude, we have a contract and you signed it and I want that truck for $5,000. Okay? It's a deal. It's too late. You can't back out now, man. So that's a small example of what the statute of frauds is and how someone can raise the defense against another person, okay? So I'm going to give you a mnemonic. I'm going to erase this definition, okay? I'm going to give you a mnemonic because this mnemonic is going to tell you exactly when the statute of frauds can be applied because the statute of frauds can only be applied for certain fact patterns, okay? And it's so important for you to know this because if you don't know the statute of frauds, you're probably going to fail your exam in contracts, okay? So let me erase this right now, and I'm going to write down the mnemonic. It's a funny mnemonic. However, because it's so hilarious, you will know it easily. And you'll do well, right? So let me write it down. Okie dokie. So, all right, let's finally get into it. So, the mnemonic I want you to understand is Mr. Dog should poop more frequently religiously. So you're probably thinking to yourself like, whoa, what does this mean? This really goofy mnemonic. That's why I want you to pay attention to not only what the mnemonic stands for over here on the right, but look at the left. The left is critical because the left side with Mr. Dog over here, this is when the statute of frauds can be raised, and these over here on the right are the exceptions, okay? Mr. Dog is when it's raised the most. Should poop more frequently, religiously, is when stuff on the left side is not present, but the party trying to enforce a contract against the defendant can raise what's on the right over here, should poop more frequently, religiously, to say that, hey, this contract is enforceable because of this. So, as I said, let me explain to you exactly what Mr. Dog should poop more frequently, religiously actually means, okay? So, M stands for marriage, okay? If there's a contract for marriage, there must be a writing, and it must be signed, okay? You might think to yourself, what is a writing? And of course, when the statute of frauds was actually implemented in law, writing, of course, meant a physical signature, a logo, your initials, okay? But these days, because we're in 2021, it could be email, okay? It could be a voice recording, okay? It could even be a email and another piece of paper that's related to the contract. But as long as one of the pieces of information is signed and related to the contract, it will still suffice. It will still work out, okay? So there must be a signature. You know how you say in your email, hi, my name is, let's say, Samuel. I want to marry your daughter. Sincerely yours, Sam. That counts as a signature under the statute of frauds. There's a writing that is signed, okay? So that's what M stands for. M is marriage. R is real property. Real property really stands for buying a house. Okay, if I want to buy a house, move out of my apartment with wife and my kids, whatever the case may be in the future for me, I have to have a writing, and I must sign that writing. It must be signed, or else the contract is not enforceable. Okay, so let's say that I want to buy a house here in Nevada, and I want to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, move out of my place with my wife and kids, and I sign it with the realtor, okay? Basically, I walk into the office and we have a writing down, but I accidentally don't sign the contract. And the realtor is trying to enforce that contract on me. He's the plaintiff, I'm the defendant. He's like, Sam, you had a contract with me. And I'll say, whoa, guy, I did not sign it. Therefore, because I didn't actually sign it, that contract is not enforceable against me, and I can go out to Las Vegas, find a better and bigger house than the house that he thought I was going to buy. Okay, remember, there must be a signature, and it must be signed against the party who enforcement is sought, okay, for real property. Next, we have depth of another, okay? An example of depth of another. Let's say that my friend Riley needs some help, okay? Let's say that Riley owes $1,000 to FAFSA because he took out a loan for school, okay? We all wish school was $1,000. Anyway, so let's say that I have a contract with FAFSA, and I say, you want to know what, FAFSA? I will be the person who will pay off this $1,000 loan for Riley, signed Samuel. FAFSA can enforce that contract onto me and say, look, dude, you promised through this contract that we have together, you signed it, there's a writing, and you said that you would take on the debt of Riley by paying that $1,000 that he owes us. Therefore, we can haul you into courts and enforce this contract on you, okay? Then no matter what happens, I will be liable under that contract, and I'll have to pay FAFSA $1,000, okay? That's an example of debt of another. Also, we have contracts that are more than 1 year. And a perfect example of this that I'm sure we all know about this kind of contract is that let's just say that we're trying to get an apartment, a 1-year lease, okay? Usually it's like a year and a day. Let's use my example. I live in an apartment. I have a place for about a year and 2 months, okay? Like a 14-month contract with this apartment, okay? I had to sign that. I had to not only have a writing with them, but I also have to sign that contract to say that, look, I'm going to pay the rent on time, and if I vacate the apartment, I'm still going to be liable for the month's rent that's paid thereafter, okay? So because that contract is more than 1 year, even if it's a year and 1 day, that's still technically more than 1 year. So when you have a contract, a fully formed contract, you must ensure that, look, is this contract more than 1 year? If so, I better type in my essay that the statute of frauds are going to apply here, because one of the parties can raise that and say, look, this contract is enforceable and this is a great defense that I can use against that other party because, look, this contract is more than 1 year. However, if my contract is just 12 months, let's say it's exactly 12 months, perfectly 12 months, exactly 1 year, then the statute of frauds is not necessary, okay? Doesn't matter if I sign it or not. This 1 year scenario right here is not really going to apply because it needs to be more than 1 year. So 1 year and 1 day, statute of frauds, Mr. Dog is going to apply, okay? So let's get into the last letter of Mr. Dog, which is G. G stands for goods, okay? Goods that are $500 or more needs a writing that is signed by the party against whom enforcement is sought, okay? Therefore, it goes back to my example that I used when I showed you the definition of statute of frauds, is that, remember I said that I had a contract with my friend Israel to buy his truck for $5,000. So because we have a chattel that's involved in this contract, it will not only be under the UCC, but as I said, with a fully formed contract, offer, acceptance, and consideration. And G over here in the statute of frauds is going to apply because the truck is $5,000. Therefore, it is over $500, and Israel and I have a writing that we both signed, okay? That is the reason why I can enforce that contract on the Israel if he backs out and sells it to somebody else for more money. It's too late, Israel. You said $5,000. We signed it. It's too late. Even I don't have to sign the contract as long as he signs it, because I'm enforcing the contract against him, right? As long as he signs it, it counts. And because it's over $500, as I said, the statute of frauds will apply. And I have to type that down on my essay or remember that when I'm looking at the multiple choice questions. Okay? So that's what G means. Again, Mr. Dog stands for marriage, real property, houses, apartments, etc. D is debt with another, like I said, me making a contract with FAFSA to say that, hey, I will pay Riley's loans. Okay? O is contracts that are over 1 year, okay? I have an apartment, 14-month lease, therefore the statute of frauds will apply because we have a contract that's more than 1 year, so the statute of frauds is going to be really critical for my case, okay? If it's less than 1 year or if the contract is exactly 1 year, 12 months, then this will not apply. It has to be over 1 year. We have goods, G for goods, $500 or more. Remember that. That's your key number, $500 or more, okay? So remember that for that one. So this is when things can get kind of hairy. Should poop more frequently religiously, okay? S is for sufficient memorandum, okay? So as long as you have a sufficient memorandum that is related to the contract itself, then we should be fine, okay? Again, we have a writing that is signed, and we have a sufficient memorandum that shows that. That will suffice for that situation, okay? P is for partial performance. So let's just say that there is not a writing present, and I have a contract with my friend Israel about that $5,000 truck, okay? But we partially perform. Let's say I put a down payment on the truck. I send Israel $2,000 as a down payment to the $5,000 truck that we have in our contract, okay? The court will say, look, we see partial performance here. Therefore, it's more than likely there's a contract here. Because think about it, statute of frauds is law because courts want to make sure that, look, this is an authentic contract. That's the reason behind the statute of frauds. So because I partially performed on sending Israel the $2,000 down payment, that will constitute partial performance, which is the exception to the statute of frauds. Or there are other jurisdictions, though. This will still work for your exam, by the way. Partial performance will still work for the exam. However, I want you to still note on the exam, assuming that this happens, is that M stands for the main performance doctrine, which really means that the contract was fully performed. Let's just say that I gave Israel $5,000. I gave him the money, and he won't give me the truck. That is an example of the main performance doctrine because I fully performed my part of the contract and Israel doesn't want to perform his part of the contract. Therefore, the court will say, whoa, Samuel, you performed great job. You did well. We have proof. We have the written document, but it's not signed. However, because you fully performed, this contract will be enforceable and Israel must give you that truck. Okay? F is another way of saying full performance. Okay? Full performance, which is basically fully performing the contract. Okay? R is receipt of goods. Let's say that Israel and I make that contract. We have the writing. I give him $5,000 to get you the truck, and I have a receipt. You know how you go to the store and you get a receipt for whatever item you buy? As long as I can show the court that, look, I have a receipt for the goods that I bought from the defendant. Therefore, this contract should be fully executed and performed because, like I said, I have the receipt of the goods that I bought, the $5,000 truck. However, we don't have a writing. So because I have the receipt of the goods that are purchased from Israel, I should be fine, although there's not a writing. So again, remember, Mr. Dog should poop more frequently religiously, okay? As I said, Mr. Dog, marriage, real property, debt with another, contracts that are more than 1 year, goods that are over $500. And these are the exceptions to these statute of frauds, assuming that there's no writing against the party whom enforcement sought, okay? Sufficient memorandum, partial performance, when a party partially performs his or her part in the contract. Main purpose doctrine, performance doctrine, full performance, and receipt of goods. Okay? So this is really helping your analysis for the statute of frauds. So I hope that this helped. And I'm going to get into criminal procedure for the next video. Okay? Thank you.